Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We hope you're all having a great week and that you, your teams, family, and friends are all staying safe and well. I'm Sarah Pollack, and I'm the Director of Marketing for Forward PMX, a global brand performance agency with headquarters in New York, London, and Hong Kong. Today, we're joined by two fantastic experts, Antonella Villani, our Organic Performance Lead out of London, and Cazier, our VP of Search Strategy out of South Carolina. Today, they'll be sharing the ways to strengthen your SEO and content program to help drive growth during a time of crisis, along with some actionable tactics and takeaways to help guide you. We'll have about 30 or so minutes of content, and then we'll open it up for Q&A for any questions you have. We actually received a handful of really great questions through registration, and we hope to be able to answer them throughout and after the session for you. If you have a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature and we'll try to answer it at the end of the session or follow up with you directly if time runs out. We'll also be sharing the recording and presentation materials with you afterwards. From here, I'll pass it off to Clay and Antonella.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm Antonella, a group lead of organic performance at Forward PMX based in London. I work across different verticals, mainly on international retail.
And this is Clay Cazier. I'm VP of Search Strategy here in the North America region. I oversee teams in LA, Scottsdale, Arizona, New York, and South Carolina. My job is really to help our clients and our teams figure out how to keep growing, how to respond to strategic changes, and really how to plan for the future and keep SEO as a primary revenue and lead generating channel. So that's the context that we're entering into today. What we're going to talk about is exactly what are some of the tactics that our clients have started to execute and have underway to grow within today's challenging market. We've got some insights that have to do with everything from messaging during this time, how to discover what's new and what's changing in your topical areas, how to deal with some very specific important elements when it comes to some technical changes having to do with out of stock. And I think we'll spend a good bit of time on SEO, SEM relationships, and of course dive into a quick case study and then answer some questions that we've received. So with that in mind, I've seen, just as I'm sure a lot of you have, a lot of presentations have been going out lately, and even some of our own internal documentation has a pretty standard methodology for handling SEO in a time like this. It's number one, it's to deal with the crisis itself and mitigating losses or dealing with any challenges of increased volume and interest. It's planning out and executing for a recovery period, which we all feel we're already seeing in the APAC region, and we're starting to feel here in the US and Western Europe. And then having a growth pattern or a growth strategy for how do we take things to the next level once everyone is a little bit closer to normal. This is useful, and so in that context, today's focus on this time of crisis is absolutely a part of a wider range of tactics, but specifically in focusing in this crisis period, we want to focus on what we can do now, and actually we want to bring some of those growth concepts into the crisis conversation and how exactly can we grow now and how have we seen ourselves able to actualize those tactics. So again, this is a good methodology. We're going to focus on this initial piece of the broader scope of responding to COVID, but I think we want to inject that specific scruple that growth is possible during this time. So let's discuss the tactics that are helping our brands grow today. So first things first, and this is the only item that I feel like is probably already well in your minds, meaning how do we change or how do we message today? And the first thing is, let's go ahead and make sure we have the bases covered of messaging. Of course, what are our curbside pickup availability? What are the changes to our delivery or to our inventory? Or are we facing significant delays in those processes? So it almost goes without saying that we want to make sure that we message our approach and our sympathy, our empathy, as it were, to our clients on our homepage, specifically on our location landing pages. We found it's very important for our clients to message that with a sticky banner, a banner that stays at the top of the page, no matter whether they're in mobile or desktop. But more than that, I also wanted to put out there that growth is possible if we're able to use that content or this time of crisis in our messaging as a way to actually reach out and communicate our roles in our communities. Now, whether you're a brick and mortar organization or a pure play internet organization, you are able to create connections. So in the case of Ace Hardware, for example, their individual franchisees are able to make connections with their local distribution, their news distribution points, to be able to message their personal story about surviving during this time and the services that they offer their consumers. But even for pure play organizations, being able to message what their CEO's positioning and their overall company view on the crisis is important. And although not everyone's able to make an offer like 20% of sales to first responders, as one of our clients has done, I did want to put into your minds that actually isn't a pure loss proposition, meaning consumers are sensitive to your brand's role as a supporter of first responders, of those on the front lines, even people like cashiers, etc. And that can play out into a net positive for your organization, not just in terms of PR, but in the case of this 20% of sales to first responders messaging, by making sure that was prominent, not just on the homepage, but wrapping it into a larger messaging campaign that's surviving through the COVID crisis. This is part of a wider campaign about supporting, in this case, women on the front lines of success. This is actually driven for specifically to this first responder campaign. During this time, their conversion rates have increased and their revenue actually increased by 22, nearly 23%. Now, this is not an organization, a brand that's dealing in selling hand sanitizer. So this is not revenue that's derived from consumer interest or increased demand. This is purely based upon essentially flat traffic, but increased conversion and revenue, in this case, in a luxury retail brand. So the message is that yes, we want to convey our services. We want to make sure that we message that both at the homepage and in particular the local landing page level. But go ahead and play that out to the local connections that you're perhaps able to promote. And if you're able to make an offer or participate in your communities with an ability to give back, don't necessarily chalk that up as something that's going to be a loss leader. Instead, look at it as a way of converting traffic from a community that knows everyone's struggling and appreciates your brand being able to support those. Now, in a similar sense, let's go ahead and reach out before your website, meaning for a lot of customers, the first point of contact with your brand is going to be in the search result pages themselves, the SERPS. And there's really a couple ways that we've been able to take advantage of search results themselves to get our messaging to consumers early. First, a lot of people don't realize that Google during this time is being a little bit more forgiving and relaxed about their rules on naming conventions for your local stores. So if you do have a connection to Google My Business, if you're appearing in Google Local Packs, you are able to, with authorization already implied, you are able to have your name changed to include messaging such as we've done for Vitamin Shop, which is that you can come in, or we do have contact-free curbside pickup. Something I'm trying to remember, I believe the character limit on this is around 90 characters, so you can't go on and on and on, but there is a little extra messaging that you can reach upward into the SERPs with at this point. Also, for a while, Google had turned off the ability to do to have updated ratings and reviews come through because they were limited on their ability to QA those. But they've also begun to really re-promote their Google local posts feature. They do have a specific offering to allow COVID specific messaging, but in general, being able to use Google local posts as a way to reach through the SERPs into the search results and provide your messaging there. In this case about curbside pickup for Cavender's Boot City, but any messaging when it comes to sales or offers or events that you may be having online, that's another way that we've been utilizing to get our messaging in front of consumers before they reach our website. Now, something that has been done to a certain extent before the COVID crisis is actually using your title and meta descriptions as a way to serve up promotional language or conversion sensitive language. So for some in the past, I believe that like LL Bean has always included free shipping as a piece of their title and meta descriptions, but we have seen some current clients change their title and meta descriptions to include some messaging like free and easy returns that's relevant to people who may be buying at home, who may not be able to return items as quickly, or that may second guess an organization's ability to be able to accept and process returns in a quick manner. So this is simply an extension of any good SEO strategy, whether it's in a time of crisis or not. And that's to think about the search result pages as the actual first point of contact to get whatever messaging you have in front of consumers before they reach your website. Our colleagues in the paid space have always known this. What makes paid a great channel is, of course, not only its immediate on or off nature, but its ability to handcraft the messaging consumers receive before they click through to the site. So let's take a note from their tactics and be able to use these features to craft our message before the click through to the website even occurs. Antonella, do you want to talk about Discover What's New?
Sure, thank you, Clay. In this section here, as Clement just mentioned, we're going to talk through how do we discover what's new. And here you see a screenshot that you've probably seen many times before, and I think like Google Trends is a great place to start your topical research. So to start by using Google Trends, first thing you need to do, you need to think about something you already know, so a known topic, or you can use your internal search results to start your research from there, and to understand how the consumers are changing and what kind of things are they looking for right now. So for instance, here we started our research by looking at gardening, and then we dig deeper into some ideas. For instance, here we came out with small garden ideas, which it is at the highest historical point it has ever been. So then you can dig deeper into that. That's already a perfect blog post title, but then you can dig deeper into it and try to find what are the related queries there are, what are any breakout queries that people are looking for. So for instance, here we ended up in some Spanish queries around how to plant garlic, how to plant tomatoes, and how to plant roses. So all things that people are searching right now. So if you go to the following slide, though, so we want to look at not only what is trending, but once we know what is trending, we want to make our content more useful. So there are plenty of tools like Also Asked or Answer the Public, which you probably used before, that allow you to go deeper into any topic and answer and scrape the SERPs to understand what questions people are asking around the topic. So for instance, I don't know, when is the best month to plant roses, or to remain on the gardening subject, or things like that. In that way, you create a strong topical relevancy around your page, and then you can create many of these articles all related to some of these questions, and that way you can make sure that you answer what the people are looking for. Another key point here to make is that you can use the FAQ schemas as well to make sure to try to get more space in the SERPs and make sure that you make the most of it as well.
And to jump ahead to one concept we already saw in some of our Q&A that has come through, this is a good way to think about topical modeling. This is a concept that simply means, how do we group together concepts? How do we take one idea and express it in a way that's more relevant to consumers, which, by the way, is now also the way that Google kind of processes and ranks content is by the semantic relationships between one topic to another, the interlinking between one post and another post, or a page and a post. So this is virtually a topical model in and of itself. That's not just going to go into the traditional idea of hand cream by all of the different facets or the different scents that they may come in, but the ideas of what functions do the hand cream serve in the lives of consumers. So we know that, of course, hand cream is not applicable to all of you in the audience, but the concept is, let's start with Google Trends with something you know, use that to mine the latest information or the latest derivation that people are looking for, and then turn back to a traditional tool that's a little less timely, but does provide the same kind of topical analysis that's required within the broader kind of semantic relationship world that Google appreciates. Sorry, Antonella, I'll jump back in.
No worries. Thanks for the recap. Yeah, and then just one last point as well, just to go back to the question that we're asking about search intent modeling. Again, this is just example, or maybe more sort of informational queries, but when we talk about search intent modeling, it's important to be able to map queries and keywords to the various stages of the purchase funnels. So, for instance, these would be more top of the funnel type of questions where you want to be seen as relevant for a certain topic, rather than the more specific, I don't know, buy compost online next day delivery type of question.
So one concept I'll jump in with real quick is that we've implied in the previous slides that keyword research and topical research is difficult right now for a breaking concept. Well, probably about 6 weeks breaking at this point, but a breaking concept like COVID-19 and how language is changing. You know, a lot of the traditional SEO tools that we've used to do keyword research don't quite keep up as much as Google Trends does. I will say that the SEMrush or SEMrush is a little more updated. They tend to adjust their data to searcher interest levels a little more quickly than most others. But one place that we can't ignore is the fact that social media itself is a real-time kind of pulse of the world when it comes to your topics. So I'm sure that you're already watching your own topical feeds, or your own organization's feeds within Facebook in particular is good, but also make sure that you monitor and aggregate some of the information that's coming out across your competitors, and even some of the topical groups that hopefully you're already a part of, because those, honestly, I feel those are the best source of information on breaking keyword trends and concepts, even more so than Google Trends. To give you a very concrete example, for one of our clients, they were interested in how the application of protein powder and how people talking about protein powder has changed before versus now during the COVID crisis. The question is, how should we change our messaging? This isn't just in blog posts to be able to put out something timely, but this is how will the conversation about protein powder, about a topic, change as we move into that recovery and growth phase and stay. So in this example, pretty clearly, before the COVID-19 crisis, the conversations about the topic all had to do with fitness and muscle mass and working out, etc. No surprise. But as the virus began to take hold, the conversations quickly began to change to first about stockpiling protein powder for the sake of fitness because people couldn't get out. But it quickly changed into the idea of buying protein powder as a core part of a nutrition plan, meaning if meat is not able to be found, then perhaps we need to think about protein powders in different ways. Of course, there have been conversations that have happened about the flavors of protein powders and what's best, etc. That's going to stay throughout this process of recovery and growth. But it does seem as if there's the new concept that we need to start addressing of protein powder as a way to supplement your current intake, your nutrient intake and selection of groceries even, to be able to live a normal life. And finally, we've begun to see a thread throughout this, which is that coronavirus can't keep us down. This is something that whether you seize on the things you see there as a specific quote, or whether you use that to inform your content strategy, your tone, your messaging, those are all important things that you wouldn't find in a Google Trends that really do summarize concepts that you should weave throughout everything from your e-commerce copy to your blog posts, and even recycle back into your social media posts. So can't stress enough that social media listening, we have tools like NetBase that we use, but you can use some free tools that we'll talk about at the end of the presentation. Even hashtagify me to keep track of hashtags as they trend. Those are important ways to keep your content and messaging ideas fresh. Antonella?
Thanks, Clay. Here we wanted to give you again another quick example on how we could capitalize on some of the growing interest in certain areas. So for instance, here with all the advice about hand washing, etc., we've seen obviously a surge in demand about hand washing, hand sanitizing, anything to do about with hands. And obviously, as a result of all this hand washing, dry hands has become a hot topic as well. So anything again regarding hand cream and hand lotions has increased in interest and in impressions quite a bit, quite significantly. So what can we do? For instance, this is an example on how we've used Google Trends and emerging topics to capitalize on it and make the most in terms of sessions and revenue for one of our clients in the beauty sector. So the main significant change we've done from an SEO perspective is just simply had the sort of hand care session to the main navigation, and that has given us fantastic results in terms of sessions with triple digit growth and four digits growth for revenue. So this is just a quick example on what you can do to to make the most of increased demand. But increased demand also means that some of your more popular items are going to be out of stock. And in this session, what we want to make sure that we cover is that out of stock doesn't mean zero revenue. So how do you make the most of customers that have already reached your website and you don't want them to bounce back? You probably heard from your SEO agency or from your in-house SEOs the sort of usual tactics, such as to redirect some out-of-stock products to the parent category if there is any sort of similar products within the category, or to a closely related product. These are obviously still valid tactics, but if you know already, for instance, when your products are going to come back, you could use different types of tactics. For instance, finding pre-ordering or email back customers when the item is back on stock, and then use related products, or other people also bought type of features.
So thanks, Antonella. One of the things that is on most people's minds and have been since the crisis started is, how do we blend together SEO and SEM data to make smart decisions about what to keep online in terms of SEM, or where should we optimize with SEO? Are there topics, or should we think about shutting down specific campaigns? Are we cannibalizing SEM or SEO traffic with SEM ads? And honestly, these are questions that have always been asked, but they seem to be more important now under challenged budgets than ever. So the first thing that we wanted to put out into the world, and this is something that we do for a lot of clients, is what we call SEO SEM blended analysis, or Google calls it Google Ads Paid and Organic Report. The first step, of course, is to make measured decisions, not just to make decisions based upon seeing dollars go out the door for SEM ads or PPC and deciding that you just want to cut off that expense before you know the returns, or the returns that you might have gotten if that had gone to SEO. To make those informed decisions, first step is to put together the data from both of those channels. As I've mentioned, Google does have the paid and organic report that you can set up within ads by connecting Google Search Console. But quite honestly, we like to do that, except we'll do it within an Excel spreadsheet or a proprietary system. And we'll join the Google Ads data and the Google Search Console data at the query level. And so when we connect those at the query level, we'll be able to see queries where both we've placed ads and converted through ads, and where we've got organic rankings and clicks to the website. Now, that is the first step, and that's really as far as Google Ads itself, their paid and organic report, will take you, is joining at the query and letting you see where they co-occur. That's not quite enough to make informed decisions about where you're returning better investment, or whether or not you'd be just as well served with one channel instead of two. Instead, it's the queries that we perform on this data after you've mashed that data together that's the most informative. And I can't stress enough, these recommended views that we're going to talk about are not just important because of COVID-19. They should be questions or queries that you've been running all along to make sure that your SEM campaigns are running as efficiently as possible, and that you know what you should be optimizing in SEO. Very specific recommended examples. If you still have your paid going on, meaning you haven't dialed back quite yet, and we will talk about what to do if you already have, but if you've got both running together, we naturally would recommend triaging things by looking at your lowest ROAS queries in SEM. Where are you not returning investment that have existing top organic rankings? Those are clear candidates or even categories that you should consider turning off in SEM and allowing SEO to do any click-through or heavy lifting when it comes to those. It's not a matter of the fact that you're spending money there in SEM that makes you want to turn those off. It's the fact that you're spending money and not getting that money back. Notice I didn't say look at what's expensive in SEM. You're looking at what's not returning investment as well. I also would say take that out one level and ask yourself, where do you have low ROAS? Maybe just instead of zero ROAS, you've got a little underwhelming return on your SEM spend, but you have organic rankings within striking distance. That's what we call it when you're in organic rankings, approximately 4 through 19. These are places where you should focus your SEO optimization today to be able to raise those rankings up into the top 3, and then you can have a valid consideration of turning off that SEM query for those lower ROAS. Will having SEO here make them return investment very, very well all of a sudden? No, but the cost per click, of course, on SEM is going to be much higher for those low ROAS, and we'd rather let SEO do that claim of search real estate instead of the per click. Now, the biggest step, and this does require a spreadsheet, and this is a way that you can actually make decisions whether you have or haven't turned off your SEM campaigns yet. And I'm speaking on a campaign level because we could talk about turning off branded, we could talk about turning off non-brand campaigns. Ultimately, I would always recommend looking at the return on investment from SEM and SEO occurring together versus organic only, or the way I like to say it, what would organic have done with the same traffic? So data is the key. What we want to do, whether you've turned this on or off, is we want to have a spreadsheet where we look at the organic clicks that you've gotten for a query alongside of the SEM or the PPC clicks for that same period. And we want to go ahead for SEM, of course, and play out what revenue did we make and subtract, of course, the cost of those ads and get a net revenue from it. And the hard part is to figure out how much revenue you either did or would make from those same clicks in SEO. And the best way that we know to recommend is that specifically for branded SEM campaigns, we would consider the homepage to be a good proxy for what organic would have done with a branded query. So if you want to estimate what SEO would do or what revenue they would generate for a branded query, I would go ahead and use the homepage's average order value and click-through rate, or if you're a lead generation company, the conversion rate of a form submission and the average order of one of those submissions as a proxy for estimating what organic's return on that click would have been. And at that point, you can simply measure what was or what would the net revenue from the SEM campaign be versus the estimated gross revenue from the organic clicks, in this case to the branded SEM campaigns, or if you're working on non-brand queries, go ahead and look at the non-brand landing page for that topical area and estimate their estimated returns. I won't make generalizations, but I can generally, but I will. And I'll say that quite honestly, organic will capture most of the branded traffic that SEM is currently getting today. There is about a 10 or a 15% incremental value or incremental click-through rate we normally see when they occur together. But the key that we've always seen is that SEM or CPC ads, they do tend to convert better when it comes to branded queries than even organic visits to the homepage or direct visits to the homepage. Usually we can attribute that to the messaging that ads are able to put into the world before people click through. Essentially, they're prepped for sale by an ad's copy. But if you wanted to think about, well, we could turn off branded SEM because SEO is already in #1 and SEO will get all of those clicks anyway. You're probably right that SEO will get many of those clicks, a vast majority, but SEM will generally return a little better investment in the short term, and there are far more, of course, downstream complex ideas such as SEM's ability to drive first click revenue that's later realized via other channels. So the message is this, if anything, it's that we need to blend the data to be able to use SEM's return on net return on that click investment as a way to measure against what SEO would do with it and to compare what SEO alone versus SEO and SEM combined would do. Unfortunately, in a webinar format, it's a little more difficult to lay out that spreadsheet for you. Perhaps in follow-up questions and answers, we could clarify if you've still got some questions. But my overall advice is don't just turn off SEM or rely on SEO because SEM is an expense line item. While SEO is generally a longer term, better return on investment, SEM does generally do more revenue with the same traffic. So I would say that unfortunately there's no pat answer, that you need to blend the data and measure it, whether you've got it turned off now and can use old data of SEO, SEM together, or whether you turn it off now and then use this go dark period to measure SEO alone's performance. Both of those are now more possible than ever before. Now, a similar concept, and we felt like this is kind of an oddball, but if we think about the interaction between SEO and paid sources, we did want to go ahead and call out, you may have already heard, but about a week ago, Google went ahead and turned on what are called surfaces across Google, or what's really being called free shopping. So you're able to use your merchant feed, your merchant center feed in Google. You're able to distribute that feed not only through paid shopping, but you're now able to distribute it for free through an unpaid section of the shopping tab. You can see that detailed on the left-hand side of your screen. So if we're thinking about how do we maximize the relationship between paid and unpaid activities within this time, a specific opportunity that was opened up now is that they have turned on this unpaid feature in response to COVID. And the traffic, although it's going to vary by industry, we are seeing appreciable traffic coming from this unpaid space. For some clients, it's in the low thousands. For other clients, it's in the mid to high thousands of traffic or clicks per day coming from unpaid ads. Right now, a lot of clients have not quite got their links tagged up properly to be able to track that through revenue. So that's the number one recommendation we have to working with this opportunity right now, is to make sure that your merchant center feeds link URL is tagged up to uniquely track these clicks. If you don't, if you just leave the link URLs without a markup, without query parameters, then it's going to get dropped into your Google organic source and medium and in your analytics solution, and you're not going to be able to differentiate that unpaid shopping traffic from all of your other Google organic, and you're not going to be able to make informed decisions. So the core concept here is that we do have a new unpaid opportunity that's arisen because of this. It is showing incremental growth for our clients that have integrated this. But the most important thing to be able to make informed decisions is mark up that feed link URL to be able to uniquely track those clicks. And you can go to the Forward PMX blog to be able to see much more detail on this, on how exactly to mark that up and how it interacts with paid. But going on down the line, your question may become, well, how do we optimize for these free shopping ads? The advice direct from Google was that these unpaid ads are served and according to an algorithm that's an exact mirror of the paid ads, except for the CPC aspect of it, which means the ads are served, the unpaid ads are served according to the quality of the landing page metadata, the schema markup that appears on those product landing pages, the click-through rate of people who see that product feed, which is a direct consequence of the things like the image quality, and of course the click back to search results that they may see from people abandoning an ad that they've clicked through. So things like the site speed of the landing page also become important ways that you can capture more real estate in this growth opportunity. So we felt this was worth mentioning, although it's kind of an odd new item, but this is definitely growth available today that's been opened up associated directly with the COVID-19 crisis. Okay, one idea and something, and quite honestly, to be transparent, I didn't want to do as part of this conversation was do what a lot of SEO agencies and personnel are doing right now, which is say, well, it's quiet right now for some industries, and so you should do all of the things that we've always told you to do. Well, let's be a little bit more specific than that, and it's what I'll call seizing the operational opportunity. Let's change the way we work, especially if you're in an industry like travel that's a little bit more quiet or very quiet if you've been asked to shut down your hotel in some aspects. Let's use this, number one, as an opportunity to go ahead and tackle the high risk, high reward projects that are on your list to do that you've always put off. So that's the way I would phrase the common concept of do the things that you've never had time to do, is let's look at those with the highest potential reward, like site migrations, like navigational restructures that you've always put off. But even more important than that is that even for industries or even for clients of ours that have their actual, let's say their organizations have downsized, or their products aren't selling as well as they were before COVID-19, sometimes those people, those C-suite executives, the marketing folks, they're more busy now than ever. And so we've taken this chance as an agency to disintermediate, to go direct to working more closely with their developers, to be able to guide those developers or the content authors, their copywriters, their social media teams, to work more closely and directly with them without the hand-holding that some directors of marketing which some CMOs have traditionally inserted themselves into the middle of. Now, don't get me wrong, we love having C-suites and directors involved in the day-to-day decision-making and approval processes that a lot of dev requires. But I simply wanted to put it into your minds that if you're able to rely on your SEO agency in particular to work more closely and to help prioritize items in your dev queue according to revenue, let's say, then you're going to free up some of your own time. You're going to be able to trust your agency a little bit more to help get some things done in this time where you may be busier than ever, seeming to be in contrast to what people may think your day is like during this downturn. So Antonella, why don't you bring it all home with a case study showing how all of these concepts have really been played out with a client to grow right now?
Yes, thanks, Clay. As Clay just mentioned, this case study is a nice sum up of all the sort of tactics that were mentioned around this presentation, and just to show that you can sort of grow right now with using sort of these tactics. They're not very new to SEO. They're very sort of standard SEO practice, but they help you to make the most of the sort of surging demand in certain areas. In this case study here, for instance, we're looking at a very well-known high street brand in the UK. They serve anything to do with any trading or trades, any DIY, decorating, gardening, etc. If you move to the next slide, please. As you can imagine, especially in the UK, but in Europe in general, we've seen a high surge in demand around anything to do with renovations, making the most of your time at home to make your home a nice place. So there would be things like paints for your sheds, for your fences, but for your indoors as well, and things like, I don't know, compost, because people want to grow their own, even their own food, like fruit and vegetables. So these are the sort of incredible results we've seen across some of these categories, but obviously these are not just due to the increase in demand. We needed to make sure that we were there with rankings, supporting both branded and generic rankings, in order to gain that traffic. So as I was saying, these are not new or extravagant SEO tactics. They are quite like sort of standard you might hear from your SEO agency. Like, okay, we want to review your taxonomy, we want to review navigation, we want to review how you call your products, and making sure that what people are searching for is included within your content, within your landing pages, within your product descriptions, within your product titles, etc., within your internal linkings. So all of these tactics together played out in the results that we've seen before. if you can move to the next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you. Another thing that we've done with specific client is looked at creation of dynamic categories where the sort of where there was enough search traffic in order to create subcategories. So for instance, things like, I don't know, glitter wallpaper or red paint or things like that. And we've seen again a very sort of high number of clicks generated to these subcategories that were able to rank with for more specific search intent, which also meant higher conversion rates and as well as a higher click-through rates in the SERPs if there is a very specific page built for what consumers are using for. The other thing that we did as well to make the most of this increased demand is to, as I was mentioning before, making sure that if we appear on the SERPs, people want to click on our website and want to engage with us. So some of the schemas that are available to implement on your homepage were implemented, such as the reviews, which gives you the rating stars in the SERPs, as well as the pricing, the availability, the breadcrumbs, has led to a high increase in click-through rate, which meant for generic keywords an increase of 81% in click-through rate, which was quite fantastic to see, and as well as an increase to product pages by almost 200%. So again, as we mentioned during this webinar, I think it's very important just to say that these sort of tactics have not changed in this sort of period that we live in. They're just adapted and making sure that you know what your customers are looking for might be a little bit different from what they were looking for before. So we put together like a very short list of some of the tools that we talked about before, as well as some of the resources from Google about how to use markup or how to optimize your merchant center feeds. And also we've added in a link to Google Data Studio templates, which could be very useful if you want to plot together SEO and PPC data. I'm going to hand you over to Sarah. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. So we do have about 10 or so minutes left for questions, and we'd like to address some of the questions that came in through the registration. So the first two actually being around SEO and SEM. The first being, how can SEO performance inform decisions when it comes to turning other channels back on? And the second question being, how would you address or analyze SEM, SEO cannibalization, as most advertisers will relaunch SEM campaigns progressively post-COVID?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and jump on this one, Sarah. Thank you. So first, the idea of cannibalization, and again, this applies either before or after COVID, is always an interesting one because cannibalization is only such a thing if SEM and SEO performing together delivers less value than SEO performing alone. Another way to put that is that I don't mind if SEM quote cannibalizes or SEO quote cannibalizes SEM if the channel that has gotten the traffic has done more revenue-wise or conversions-wise with that click. So the idea is back to that measurement of what is the total click volume and the net revenue of the two queries appearing together versus when one, let's say now if you've turned the SEM campaign off, what that query is likely making through SEO alone. I can't stress enough that number one, we do have to kind of make a conceptual leap as we move into analytics and revenue because, as you know, many years ago, Google turned off keyword or query level data in analytics for the most part. So you are going to have to think about the SEO side in terms of landing page conversions that are most closely aligned with that query. I will throw out a side note that you can actually query the Google Search Console API and get query data by click volume, by landing page as well, if you want to seek out absolute confirmation of the landing pages that a query is driving towards. But the core idea is that there's no cannibalization if you're able, there's no such thing as negative cannibalization if and when you can mathematically map out that the SEM SEO appearance together generates more revenue than SEO alone. So the whole focus is then on when and how do we have SEO existing by itself. For some, or for pre-COVID-19, you had both operating on their own, and the question was, should we turn one off? Well, in that case, unfortunately, the best and only real way to turn it off would be to segment out specific queries with negative matches in SEM to be able to essentially go dark for a keyword in SEM or for a query in SEM and do the analysis that I'm speaking of. For some, let's call it the advantage of COVID and the advantage of considering turning SEM back on is now you absolutely do have that go dark scenario for SEM, and you've been getting data for SEO operating alone. And whether it's by looking backwards at the data from pre-COVID, or whether it's measuring SEM and SEO together as you turn SEM back on, you'll now have that comparative data set to show in contrast to that SEO only data source. So again, that's the best way to measure is actually with the data, not looking at it from a pure expense point of view or purely from a point of view of, well, SEO would have gotten those clicks anyway. And trust me, this is coming from an SEO guy. SEO, SEM generally performs better in terms of revenue, even net revenue, than it does with SEO alone. But of course, if high level expense is your number one focus, it's hard to avoid the conclusion that letting SEO do the lifting and the conversion is a better plan purely from an expense point of view. Hopefully you're looking at it a little more nuanced and downstream into revenue. And for the most nuanced, we have to blend in the first click contributions of both SEO and SEM to that overall revenue generation. So I think that ultimately that's the answer to the question is no such thing as cannibalization if the revenue is better. The only way to compare it is a time of go dark with SEO where SEM is go dark. That could be right now, or it could be that you're trying to decide to do that. The best way to do it on a keyword by keyword basis is go dark with a negative match in your SEM campaign first.
Great, thanks, Clay. So the next set of questions we had come in were around reporting. So how do you properly report the effect of COVID in SEO? And how do you assess the effectiveness of your SEO agency other than keyword rank? Should we be looking more at web traffic?
Antonella, do you want to jump on
that? Yes. Thank you, Clay and Sarah. So on the first question, on how do you properly report the effect of COVID in SEO, I think the main thing that we want to look at it's our own data. So if you've got Google Search Console access, then you should be able to see and look at your impressions, your brand impressions, especially for pure brand, where you can see, for instance, how many people are searching for your brand. Is it changed? You can compare it to the previous period. You can compare it to last year, for instance, 2 years ago, and then you could even use keyword planner for search volume to compare it to your competitors as well, to try to understand. To try to understand, it is not the data there is not as granular, but you can try to understand if your dip, for instance, in decline in impression is something that is happening just to your brand, or if you want to look at how you compare to your competitors as well. So if it's something that is happening in the industry, or you can use again Google Trends, which is a bit more timely than probably the keyword planner search volumes. In terms of the effectiveness of your SEO agency and how to measure it, yes, keyword rank obviously is the way that we historically used to measure the effectiveness of your SEO agency, and is still a sort of a great way to measure it as well. But looking at traffic coming to the site, but also looking at the quality of the traffic, but looking, for instance, at CTRs, they're all data that are available, or CTRs, they're all data that are available in Search Console and GA. So they are very sort of useful metrics there to measure as well. Maybe how well the traffic that SEO is bringing to your site is also converting. For instance, don't know, if you had international problems with your website outranking each other, and now the SEO agency is fixed them, then you can probably see increases in conversion rate when the customers land in the correct version of the website. So yes, the job of an SEO is to bring traffic to the website, ranking high with keywords, but also making sure that they bring the correct traffic to the website as well.
Great. Thank you. I think we are just about out of time. If any others did come in, we can follow up after the session, and we'll again be sharing the recording as well as the presentation from today. So thank you, Antonella and Clay. That was great. And thank you all for joining us. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.